Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when everything around you starts to shift. People drift away, doors close unexpectedly, and the circle you once leaned on begins to look unfamiliar. At first, it feels like loss, but what if I told you it's not loss at all? What if every change, every separation, every uncomfortable transition is actually God rearranging your life for the future you prayed for? What if the shift you're fighting is the very thing that's preparing you for the level you were born to reach? Separation is one of the hardest experiences a person can go through, yet it carries some of the deepest meaning. When God begins to separate you from certain people, places, or patterns in your life, it's rarely something you recognize in the moment. Most of the time, it feels like confusion, like something is being taken from you without warning. But separation is never random. It's a divine signal that something in your life has reached its expiration date. God doesn't move pieces in your life without intention. When He starts shifting your circle, distancing you from old environments, or closing doors that once felt secure, He's sending you a message. Your life is stepping into a new season, and the people who were part of your past chapter can't follow you into the next. This shift often begins quietly, almost subtly. Conversations feel different, relationships feel heavy, and the places where you once felt comfortable start to feel tight. You may find that you no longer connect with people the same way you used to. You may notice tension, misunderstandings, or a lack of alignment with those you once relied on. This isn't coincidence, it's transition. Your spirit is outgrowing what your environment can no longer support. When you're meant to rise, staying where you are becomes uncomfortable, and the discomfort is the sign that God is pushing you towards something greater. People rarely talk about the emotional weight of separation. It can make you question your worth, your decisions, and your direction. You wonder why this person changed, why this friendship faded, why this opportunity dissolved, but every separation carries purpose. God sees conversations you didn't hear. He sees intentions you didn't notice. He sees the future you can't see yet. Sometimes He removes someone not because they are bad, but because their role is complete. Other times He separates you because the loyalty you have for someone is holding you back from the life He designed for you. And if He doesn't shift your circle, you might stay stuck in a chapter that was never meant to be your final destination. There's a deeper truth in this. Separation protects you from stagnation. Growth demands movement. Purpose demands elevation. Destiny demands transformation. If God allowed every person to stay in your life, their habits, their mindset, and their limitations might anchor you to a level you've already outgrown. And God will never allow permanent roots in temporary soil. When He moves people out of your life, it's because they are no longer aligned with the mission He has placed on your spirit. Their presence might distract you, drain you, or derail you from what He's building through you. So He cuts ties you're too loyal to cut yourself. But separation isn't only about people leaving. It's about you becoming. You begin to see who you were and who you're becoming, and the gap grows too wide for some relationships to survive. When God starts shifting your circle, He's also shifting your identity. He's calling you to think differently, act differently, expect differently. That requires a new level of focus, discipline, and clarity, and not everyone around you is willing to grow with you. Some people are attached to your old self, the version of you who tolerated things the new version will never accept. So God creates distance to protect your evolution. Even though separation feels like loss, it's actually alignment. It's God positioning you where you need to be, around who you need to have, so you can step into what He has prepared. He removes noise, so you can hear Him clearly. He removes distractions, so you can walk with purpose. He removes mismatched connections, so you have the emotional space to receive new, healthier, stronger ones. Separation is God's way of clearing the path, even when the clearing hurts. In time, you'll see that everything He removed was making room for everything He promised. Growth requires new energy, and that truth becomes clearer as you move through life. There comes a point where the version of yourself that kept you comfortable can no longer carry you into the future God has prepared. You start to feel a pull inside you, a quiet voice telling you that you need more discipline, more focus, more purpose, more honesty with yourself. And when that inner shift begins, the energy around you has to shift too. You can't grow in an environment that keeps you small. You can't elevate while surrounded by people who are committed to staying the same. Growth demands a new frequency, and not everyone is willing or ready to rise with you. When God is preparing you for something greater, He begins changing your expectations. Suddenly, the conversations that once entertained you now feel empty. The habits that once felt normal start to feel draining. The people who never wanted to stretch themselves start to feel heavy to be around. This isn't you becoming cold or distant. It's you becoming aware. Your spirit recognizes that the same energy that once fit your life now limits it. The circle you once leaned on can't support the weight of your future. And because God knows how powerful your potential is, He begins to separate you from anything that slows or weakens your growth. The truth is, your future requires a different version of you, one that can handle bigger responsibilities, tougher challenges, and higher levels of purpose. But growth doesn't happen in a stagnant environment. If the energy around you doesn't challenge you, push you, or inspire you, you end up staying the same. And staying the same is a silent form of decay. You may not realize it, but every day spent surrounded by low energy chips away at the greatness inside you. If the people around you don't dream, you stop dreaming big. If the people around you don't grow, your growth becomes uncomfortable. If the people around you fear change, they will convince you to fear it too. That's why God shifts your circle. He knows that who you walk with influences who you become. If you stay surrounded by people with small vision, you'll start thinking small. If you stay connected to people who don't believe in their purpose, you'll question yours. And if you continue living in environments that reward comfort more than character, you'll never rise into what God knows you can be. Growth requires a new atmosphere, one that elevates your thinking, stretches your faith, and raises your standards. When you start growing, you begin noticing patterns. You notice how much energy you waste on conversations that lead nowhere. You notice how drained you feel after being around certain people. You notice how your spirit feels heavy when you try to shrink yourself for someone else's comfort. These aren't accidents, they're signs that your soul is asking for more, signs that your purpose is unfolding, signs that something in your life needs to change so you can grow into the person you're meant to be. But growth also requires courage. It's not easy to outgrow people you love. It's not easy to walk away from habits you've carried for years. It's not easy to admit that you've been living below your potential because the world around you wasn't built for your future. Yet this courage is necessary. You cannot grow while clinging to what's holding you back. Sometimes God won't elevate you until you release the very things you're most attached to, because those attachments are tied to your old identity, not your future one. As you rise, God replaces old energy with new energy. He brings people into your life who challenge your excuses, who push you to think bigger, who remind you of who you truly are. He surrounds you with individuals who match your ambition, your values, your hunger for purpose. These are the people who don't feel threatened by your growth. They empower it. And when your energy starts aligning with your destiny, you begin to experience breakthroughs that were impossible in your old environment. Growth requires new energy because your purpose requires a stronger, wiser, more focused version of you. And God will shift everything around you, your circle, your mindset, your habits, until your environment matches the greatness He placed inside you. Elevation creates isolation, and that truth becomes clearer the moment God starts moving you into a new level of life. When you're meant to rise higher, God often pulls you away from the noise, the crowds, and even the familiar comfort of the people you've always known. This isolation isn't punishment, even though it can feel like it. It's actually the construction zone of your destiny, the place where God shapes, strengthens, and prepares you without distractions. People often imagine elevation as applause, recognition, and support. But what they don't see is that the first stage of elevation usually happens in silence, behind closed doors, where only you and God can hear each other clearly. Isolation creates clarity. When you are surrounded by too many people, their opinions and expectations can drown out your own intuition. Their voices can overpower God's whispers. But the moment you find yourself alone, truly alone, your mind and spirit become sharper. You start hearing thoughts you ignored for years. You start recognizing patterns you once overlooked. You start understanding who you've been and who you're becoming. Elevation requires this kind of stillness because you can't build a strong future in a noisy room. You need quiet to understand your purpose, and sometimes that quiet only comes when God removes the people who kept your life loud. But isolation is not only about clarity, it's about character. When God isolates you, He's preparing the version of you who can handle the blessings, responsibilities, and challenges tied to your next level. Growth isn't just about gaining, it's about becoming. And becoming requires discipline, humility, and strength that can't be developed when you're surrounded by constant validation or constant distraction. The strongest versions of people are almost always formed in their private battles, not their public victories. In isolation, you learn to rely on faith instead of approval. You learn to trust your decisions instead of seeking agreement. You learn to stand on your purpose even when there's no one clapping for you. There's also a protective element to isolation. Elevation exposes you to criticism, jealousy, and resistance that you're not ready for until your spirit is fully aligned with your purpose. So God hides you for a season. He keeps you away from the people who might sabotage your progress, question your growth, or plant seeds of doubt in your mind. He shields you from unnecessary battles and prepares you internally before placing you in a space where your elevation will be visible. Being hidden doesn't mean you're forgotten. It means you're being protected until the right time. Isolation also reveals the depth of your relationship with yourself. When you no longer have people to distract you from your insecurities or your dreams, you begin confronting your truth. You start addressing the habits that have held you back. You begin understanding the emotional wounds you've ignored. You find strength you didn't know you had. This internal work is crucial for your next level because elevation without self-awareness leads to self-destruction. God separates you so you can heal, so you can grow, so you can let go of the pain and patterns that would collapse the foundation of your future. As you elevate, you'll notice that the room grows smaller. The conversations become deeper, the relationships become fewer but more meaningful. You begin to see that not everyone can go with you, not because they're bad, but because they weren't built for the altitude you're about to reach. Higher levels come with thinner air, and not everyone has the capacity to breathe where you're going. You learn to accept that some people were meant for your past, not your future. While isolation feels heavy at times, it is temporary. It is a season designed specifically for transformation. When the time is right, God will reintroduce you to the world, but you'll be different. You'll be wiser, stronger, clearer, and more aligned with your purpose. What once felt like loneliness will turn into preparation. What once felt like loss will become elevation. And you'll look back and realize that the isolation you hated was actually the turning point that built the foundation for everything you were destined to become. Who you walk with determines where you end up, and this becomes undeniable the moment you start paying attention to the energy, mindset, and direction of the people around you. Your circle shapes your habits, your beliefs, your expectations, and ultimately your future. When God begins shifting your circle, it's because he knows that the voices influencing you right now can either guide you toward your destiny or pull you away from it. The people you spend the most time with quietly shape your identity. Their ambition, or lack of it, affects your own. Their fears can become your fears. Their negativity can become your language. Their limitations can become your ceiling. That's why God doesn't just shift your path, he shifts your company. He knows you can't walk into your purpose with the wrong people standing beside you. When God is about to elevate you, he becomes intentional about who stays and who goes. You may start noticing subtle changes. Conversations feel different. The connection doesn't flow the same. The alignment you once had begins to fade. That's not coincidence. That's God redirecting your steps. You can't grow in an environment built on old versions of you, and many times the people around you are only familiar with the version of you they met, not the version God is shaping you into. They remember your weaknesses, your mistakes, your past limitations. They don't always see your evolution. Some people only support you as long as your growth doesn't outgrow theirs. That's why God shifts your circle before you even realize you need a new one. Your circle influences your decisions more than you think. If you surround yourself with people who complain, you'll start complaining. If you spend time with people who have no discipline, you'll start letting go of your own. If your circle doesn't challenge you to think bigger, you'll settle for smaller without even noticing. God can't let that happen, not when he's trying to guide you toward purpose. So he disrupts connections that feel comfortable but are actually keeping you stagnant. He removes voices that feed your doubts instead of your faith. He distances you from people who drain your spirit instead of fueling it. Every shift is strategic. Every separation is protection. Some people are tied to your wounds, not your healing. They're tied to your struggle, not your breakthrough. They're connected to your old story, not your new chapter. God knows that if they stay close, they will influence your direction in ways that could delay or derail your destiny. So even if it hurts, he removes them. Not because they're evil, but because the version of you that's emerging needs different support, different inspiration, different loyalty. You're stepping into a future that requires strength, clarity, and resilience, and not everyone has the capacity to walk at that level with you. Your circle also affects your faith. If you stay around people who don't believe in themselves, it becomes harder for you to believe in what God is doing in your life. If you surround yourself with people who fear change, they will convince you to stay where you are. If your circle is filled with doubt, your spirit becomes confused. But when God shifts your circle, he brings people who push you, challenge you, correct you, and remind you of your purpose. These are the voices that speak life, not limitation. These are the people who aren't threatened by your growth. They celebrate it. They don't hold you back. They push you forward. When your direction changes, your circle must change too. A new level requires new guidance. A new chapter requires new energy. God knows that if you remain connected to people who don't share your vision, you'll end up shrinking to fit their comfort. But when he shifts your circle, he positions you around people who encourage your elevation, who match your ambition, and who walk in the same direction you're meant to walk. That alignment accelerates your future in ways you never imagined. And even though losing people feels painful, it's necessary, because God is not just protecting your present, he's preparing your future. He's removing distractions and misalignments so nothing slows down the path he has set for you. When he shifts your circle, he's shifting your destiny. And when he shifts your destiny, everything in your life begins to move toward the purpose he designed specifically for you. Closed doors are some of the most misunderstood moments in life. When someone walks away, betrays you, or suddenly becomes distant, it's natural to feel rejected, confused, and hurt. You start questioning yourself, wondering what you did wrong or why things changed. But what looks like loss from your perspective is often protection from God's perspective. Closed doors are not always about what you're losing. They're about what you're being shielded from. God sees things you can't see. He hears conversations you weren't present for. He knows intentions that never showed up on the surface, and when he closes a door, no matter how painful, it's because something behind that door could have damaged you, delayed you, or detoured you from your purpose. Sometimes God removes a person before their presence becomes a problem. You might not notice the jealousy, the hidden resentment, or the quiet sabotage, but God does. He sees the future impact of keeping that person close, and he steps in. Instead of exposing their intentions to you directly, he simply closes the chapter. This feels harsh, but it's mercy. It's protection disguised as rejection. The disappointment you feel is only the surface emotion. Beneath it is a divine shield guarding you from deeper pain. When someone leaves your life unexpectedly, it doesn't mean you failed. It means God intervened. Closed doors also prevent stagnation. Humans naturally hold on to what's comfortable, even when it's no longer good for them. We cling to relationships out of habit, environments out of familiarity, and patterns out of fear. But comfort can be the greatest enemy of destiny. If everything stayed the same, you wouldn't grow. And if the wrong people stayed in your life, their influence could keep you trapped in a version of yourself God is trying to evolve you beyond. So God closes doors you never would have shut on your own. He removes what you would have tolerated. He ends what you would have extended. He clears what you would have clung to, not because he wants you to suffer, but because he knows you deserve better than what you were settling for. Pain becomes a teacher in these moments. It forces you to evaluate your life, your choices, and your relationships. You start seeing what you ignored before. You realize who truly supported you and who was only around when it was convenient. You understand that some people were never meant to stay. They were only meant to teach you something, reveal something, or strengthen something inside you. Closed doors refine your discernment. They make you wiser, more intentional, and less willing to compromise your peace for temporary companionship. Sometimes the door closes because God needs you to redirect your focus. You may have been investing your energy in the wrong place, trying to force something to work, or chasing approval from someone who was never meant to validate you. Closed doors shift your attention back to yourself and your purpose. They remove distractions that were slowly draining your spirit. They create space for new beginnings, new opportunities, and new connections. What feels like an ending is often the beginning of something far more aligned with your future. And then comes the moment, sometimes months or years later, when everything begins to make sense. You look back and realize that the person you cried over would have held you back from the blessings you now have. You recognize that the situation you lost was too small for the path God was preparing. You understand that the delay was protecting you from disaster, and you see that every door that closed led you to a door that opened, one with more peace, more purpose, and more alignment. Closed doors are divine protection. They redirect your steps, guard your heart, and prepare your future. And even though they hurt in the moment, they heal your life in the long run. Every person who walked away, every plan that fell apart, every opportunity that slipped out of your hands, none of it was random. It was God making sure nothing and no one could interfere with the destiny He designed specifically for you. New connections create new levels, and this truth becomes undeniable once God begins clearing out the people who were never meant to stay. When some relationships end and certain doors close, it's easy to focus on what you lost. But in reality, God is creating space for the people who are designed to walk with you into your next season. The future God has planned for you requires support, wisdom, alignment, and energy that your old circle couldn't provide. You're stepping into a version of yourself that needs stronger connections, deeper conversations, and healthier influences. And God knows exactly who belongs in that chapter, even when you don't. New connections don't always appear immediately. Sometimes God leaves you in a season of isolation for a while, letting you adjust to a new identity before surrounding you with new people. He wants you to heal from old wounds, to release old expectations, and to find stability in who you're becoming. Because if you bring old pain into new relationships, you'll sabotage blessings meant for your future. God waits until you are ready, not until you are lonely, and when the time is right, He introduces you to new individuals who reflect your growth instead of your past. These new connections don't feel forced. They feel natural, peaceful, and aligned. You'll notice that the people God brings into your life respect your boundaries, understand your purpose, and encourage your evolution. They're not intimidated by your progress. They're not competing with you silently. They're not holding on to who you used to be. They show up with a spirit that matches your direction. They speak life into your goals. They challenge your thinking in healthy ways. They pull you upward instead of pulling you backward. These are the kinds of relationships that accelerate your growth because they nourish your strengths instead of feeding your weaknesses. God also uses new connections to unlock opportunities you never imagined. A single conversation can shift your mindset. One encounter can open a door you've prayed for. Someone's guidance can save you years of struggle. Someone's support can push you into a purpose you were too afraid to chase alone. Sometimes the answer to your next level isn't a miracle, it's a person, and God knows which person carries the key to the door He wants you to walk through. That's why He removes the people who distract you and replaces them with people who will align with the mission He's placed in your spirit. But new connections also require courage. You have to be willing to release old attachments to make room for new alignment. You can't cling to people who drain you and expect God to send people who will elevate you. Growth demands space, and God will not give you new blessings while you're still entertaining old burdens. When He shifts your circle, He's asking you to trust that the replacements will be better than the losses. He's asking you to believe that your future relationships will be healthier than your past ones. He's asking you to step into the unknown with an open heart, trusting that divine connections are worth leaving old comfort zones behind. These new relationships don't always look the way you expect. Sometimes they come in the form of mentors who teach you what you never learned growing up. Sometimes they come as friends who feel like family. Sometimes they come as partners who mirror your faith, your values, and your drive. Other times they come as brief encounters, people who enter your life for a short season but leave a permanent impact. What matters is not how long they stay, but how deeply they contribute to your purpose. As you rise, you'll understand why God didn't allow certain people to stay. Some would have slowed your growth. Some would have drained your joy. Some would have limited your vision. Not everyone can see the path you're walking, and not everyone is equipped to walk it with you. The new connections God brings into your life are carefully chosen, perfectly timed, and spiritually aligned. They meet you at the level you've grown into, not the level you've outgrown. New levels require new people, new purpose requires new energy, and new blessings require new alignment. When God introduces these connections, they don't just change your circle, they change your life. They help you become the person you were always meant to be, walking in a purpose that only the right people could help you reach. When God shifts your circle, He's shifting your entire future. Every separation, every moment of isolation, every closed door, and every new connection is part of a divine design that's shaping you into the person you're meant to become. Nothing that left your life was accidental, nothing that changed was without purpose, and nothing that God removed was meant to stay. He is aligning your path with people who match your growth, environments that support your calling, and opportunities that fit your destiny. You are walking into a season where your spirit is stronger, your vision is clearer, and your purpose is louder than it has ever been. Trust the process, honor the transitions, and walk boldly into the future God is preparing. Because every shift, no matter how painful, was the key to unlocking the version of you that is ready to rise. Thank you for allowing this message to speak into your journey. I pray that every word gives you clarity, confidence, and courage as you move forward. May you walk with strength, stay aligned with purpose, and welcome the blessings waiting for you on the other side of these shifts. Your future is calling, your purpose is rising, and you are ready.